Good morning, everybody. Tara here with the Wifey Wake Up podcast. Wifey Wake Up, no makeup, as you can tell. And you might hear a little kitty in the background. I call her a little kitty, but she's just 1 year old, but she's full grown now, but she's still like a kitten. So you might hear her a little bit. So, good morning, everybody. This morning, I'm going to share something that just happened just yesterday and was just another one of those epiphanies. You know, you have these things in life that happen and you're like, I thought I knew that, but it's coming up again. So, obviously, I needed to revisit this. So, as you see, this is titled I'm Not Angry. And yesterday, so this happened just yesterday morning, the incident happened yesterday morning, but I'm going to give you a little bit of background. So, almost 2 years ago, my husband had a life-threatening incident happen. We talk about it on another podcast. I run the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, and on that YouTube page, there's a full hour and a couple hours on. It's a class on diverticulitis, not necessarily a class. It's more of a just kind of a sharing of experiences. And it's not particularly diverticulitis that he has, but symptoms is very, very similar. And he had an episode related to those types of conditions, but akin to the appendix rupturing. So if you don't know what diverticulitis is, or the other things that I would use to explain it, is probably most easiestly most easily explained as being like the appendix rupturing, but it wasn't his appendix. That's how bad the infection was. And he recently said, which kind of concerned me, well, actually really concerned me, he recently said, if you hadn't taken me in that Friday, I took him into urgent care. He says, I think I could have died over the weekend. And that was pretty startling. I mean, that was probably a couple months ago that he shared that with me. So the experience alone, I mean, we knew going to the hospital, all that needed to be done was a very serious condition. So that's all just kind of a preface to this whole story about what actually happened yesterday. So yesterday morning, he had kind of nothing didn't seem serious on the outside, but like it could have developed into something serious. It's like, so you saw blood. Let's just say, and anytime you see blood, right, it's kind of startling. And I think I was actually getting ready for this podcast, and he was kind of processing through, like, could it be this, could it be that, like, not in a worried state. He's not a worrier, but just kind of like processing out loud. And I think probably hitting me up for, do you remember what happened, what I did? Maybe it could be this, maybe it could be that. Because it's really strange how when you have your own personal health issues, sometimes it's hard to remember or even spot what's going on. And it helps to have someone else to bounce your ideas off of, or even to look at you from the outside, which is why we go to professionals, right? Because they're just obviously things that we don't know, but even if you know, you can't see for yourself. So I think that's what he was doing. And I found myself getting irritated, which I don't think I let on, but I felt it inside because I was still participating with him, saying, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But I found myself getting more and more irritated. And I don't think it was because I was preparing for the podcast and I just was trying to be in that headspace. Because obviously his health and his well-being is more important than this podcast. But later that day, I thought to myself, why was I feeling upset? I was actually feeling, at a certain point, I actually felt angry inside. And I thought to myself, now I don't think I brought it, I took it out. I brought it out. I don't think I brought it out on him or that he even noticed, but I noticed it within me, and that was enough. I wanted to be aware of that. And so I thought about that a bit. I'm like, why would I feel angry, at him who was trying to figure out something that was ailing him that was related to really life-threatening condition that he experienced a couple years ago. And I thought to myself, I ruled out, okay, I'm not just upset because I was preparing for the podcast. I ruled out a few things. And I thought to myself, okay, well, it's not because I think that he was actually being irresponsible or treating his body poorly. He, has been very aware of his body and his condition, and healing. And what it came down to is that I was actually afraid. And I was afraid that, something as serious or more serious could flare up. I was afraid that he wasn't taking care of himself as well as maybe I thought he should be taking care of himself. And then I think it's the fear also of what could come down the road. What happens if he has a life-threatening condition again? It was, to say the least, it was very stressful in multiple ways. And what I realized is that I wasn't angry, I was actually afraid. And just this morning, as I was thinking about this and preparing for this podcast, I thought, what if I was afraid for a friend? Now, the tricky thing is that, my bestie, I'm not going to be afraid for her in the same way as I would be for my husband, because what happens to my husband also happens to me. Not the same way that if something happens to my bestie, she has her husband, she has her family, she has other people to rely on. But with my husband, I'm the primary other person, right? And in a selfish way, yes, that's selfish thinking, okay, if something happens to him, it happens to me. And it's not only my favorite person in this world that I would be losing in some sort of way. There was a lot of fear of loss coming up for me. But the whole point is that none of it was real. It was all, I was making it all up in my mind. And thankfully, I didn't allow those feelings to bubble up to the surface and just go, well, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I am. I really strive to think about and reflect on what my feelings are, and of course express them at the time if needed. But if they're big, right, if they're feeling intense, to really explore what's going on. So I just wanted to share that kind of epiphany. I mean, I've certainly addressed that before in counseling. Has come up before. Especially there's this phrase, if it's hysterical, it's historical. That's really helpful. That's really insightful, because like I was mentioning before, if the emotions are really big, then that's something especially to pay attention to. And so this wasn't to that degree for me, but I try to catch it along the way, before it gets to a very heightened state of emotion, what's going on, and just looking deeper and thinking about, okay, what am I really feeling here? So I know before, in other instances, different from this one. So this one is related to fear, which I think for me comes up a lot, but it also could be sadness. There could be a variety of other emotions. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. What comes up for you in the comments? I think fear is pretty common. We might feel anxious or nervous, but when you get down to the bottom of it, it's really fear. And so I'm curious if there's any other emotions when you get down to the bottom of it, if it comes out to anything other than fear. I think fear is really at the root of so many of these heightened emotions that we think are something else when we think we're feeling anxious or nervous, angry, like I said. And maybe you just need a snack. There is such thing as hanger, and we can talk about that too in some health and wellness talks, that you don't have to get to a hangry state. I definitely used to be one of those people. And it was cute. Our granddaughter asked me the other day, do you ever get upset, when you're hungry. And I tried to, it's interesting, when little kids ask you something, what it causes you to reflect about. And I thought to myself, well, this is not quite what I said. I thought, okay, well, it has happened. It certainly used to happen a lot more. I've addressed it in my own body, controlling, managing what I eat so that my blood sugars aren't up and down, because that's the main thing. That's what's happening, right? Your blood sugars are going up and down, and your body's having a hard time regulating, and you get hungry much more easily. And so I said to her, yeah, sometimes I do, but not so much anymore. Too young, obviously, to explain, but yeah, that's something to look at too. How's your general well-being? And sometimes it is because you're also stressed. And that's something to really recognize too. Are you stressed? Are you tired? Are you hungry? We're really just kind of big babies sometimes. It's, first of all, addressing, okay, do you need a freshening up? Do you need some food? Do you need more rest? And we have to manage that for ourselves. So, but the lesson for me yesterday was I was not angry. I was actually afraid. And that's probably something I need to, well, of course, after this podcast, my husband will watch this. If he's not watching it right now, he'll know. And we can talk about it, and that can change things around for sure. So let me know in the comments, what comes up for you. Maybe it's not anger that comes to the surface for you. Maybe it is anxiety or nervousness. Can feel like nervousness as well. And there's actually something underneath that. And yeah, let me know your epiphanies. I'd be curious to hear. Also, of course, like, subscribe, share, turn off your notifications. We go live every morning except for Sundays at 6 a.m. ish. Really close to that. I started at about 6:04 this morning, so that was pretty good. But love hearing from you. This is for you. So if you have any questions, comments that come up, please let me know in the comments. And have a wonderful day, everybody. Take care.